Oh, this is Seewing Yee from the Yee Real Estate Network. Thank you very much for attending. This training module is Veteran Administration Government Real Estate Foreclosures. Okay, before I will start with the picture ahead of you, in front of you, that is, uh, although uh, you, one does not need to be a real estate expert in government foreclosures to do what I'm doing. However, um, it just comes to mind that everything falls into place, whereby not only I am a real estate consultant for many, many years. However, I am promoting this government veteran administration real estate foreclosures in various parts of the country, and I have to say that I'm an expert at it, and because of my background, right, above and beyond my real estate expertise, is that who is in a better position to talk about government for VA foreclosures than a ex-service member like myself. For those of you who do not know my background, I am U.S. Army retiree, 20 years of active duty service from 1980 to 2002. So that gives me a additional, if you will, credibility and expertise to talk about this unique niche market, how to purchase VA foreclosure with 5% down for any investor can qualify. You do not need to be a military veteran. All right. So let's proceed. This picture, I know, is a long, long time ago. Uh, so you can see a picture of myself and there's a tank behind me. So, I pack big guns. All right. So don't mess with me. Are you talking to me? Are you talking to me? You know, you remember the movie Taxi Driver by Robert De Niro? Are you talking to me? And he's carrying an M16, this crazy cab driver on this movie. Google YouTube Taxi Driver by Robert De Niro. Okay, don't mess with me. I have some big guns behind me. No, I'm not. I was not in infantry. This picture was taken in 19. I hate to go back that far. I'm older than some of you who've been alive. Um, this is 1982, I believe, in South Korea. I was doing my daily routine. Oh, by the way, I'm not in the infantry, okay? That's not my tank. I'm not commanding that tank, but I could be. At that time, I was a sergeant in the U.S. Army stationed in South Korea, right? And 1982. So I happened to be I was in finance. This is my job. I'm a chairborne ranger. Okay, I work behind the desk. Okay, processing financial documents for U.S. soldiers. I'm not a I'm not a grunt. As you can see, I happened to run into this column of tanks on our way to go to the countryside and pay the U.S. troops that are located in the DMZ, the militarized zone in South Korea, right? That borders the communist North Korea. Anyway, we and we just happened to run into this column of U.S. Army tanks, and we just got off our jeep, and I took a picture in the background. But I'm just a desk clerk. Okay. All right. So let's digress. All right. That's me, a lot younger and a, a lot skinnier. Okay. So let me cut to the chase, and let's talk. Let's go over about my military background. The first 5 years of my background. This is another picture of me in 1983, South Korea. I was stationed there for one very good year, not even 1 year. Anyway, that's me over there, and that's my unit. That's my department, if you will. And we work in this. We're in finance. You can see with the second finance company, out processing. So again, I was just a desk clerk, a finance clerk, if you will, doing army things. And why is my background and this picture is relevant? Because I'm going to talk about to you, this is a very important training module that as I handpick the government via foreclosures that my investors are going to purchase, I'm going to talk to you about the anatomy of a active duty tenant. Okay, so a high number of active duty soldiers, they can rent from you and they can pay your rent. So this is a very, very good situation for you. All right, so enough of this picture. All right, so let's proceed. So the areas that we've been promoting, in case you are not aware of it, is quite a few areas. All right, so let's go over the areas in question. The market, because of my background, here are some of the areas that we're promoting via foreclosures. As you know, if you watch my other videos and newsletters, you will know this is a 5% down investment program. Any investors that qualify for financing with at least 2 years of real estate investing experience can qualify to obtain 5% down vendor financing to achieve positive cash flow, right? And these foreclosures are typically 10% below market value. So the areas that we're promoting, I'm not saying the tenant all are going to be military soldiers. I would have to say the areas that we're promoting, the active duty people that are renting potentially from you will be like 50 to 75% chance you're going to have an active duty renter, and that's a good sign. And the other individuals could be, you know, people working for the government, working for the civilian contractors that are helping with the military bases in their mission. So 50 to 75% active duty tenants, soldiers, going to be your tenant, your renter, and the others are regular people, all right, civilians or whatever they do, okay? And the areas that we're promoting, okay, I'm not going to spend too much time. And Camp Lejeune, North Carolina, is the home of the Marine Corps base in Jacksonville, North Carolina, not Florida, okay? Camp Lejeune, the second largest Marine Corps base, Jacksonville, North Carolina. That's the market we're promoting. And there are many other neighboring military installations in that area. Then that's, again, Jacksonville, North Carolina. Then we are also promoting Fayetteville, North Carolina, the home of the U.S. Army Fort Bragg, home of the 82nd Airborne Division, and one of the largest military installation in the world with 50,000 active duty soldiers. The other market, real estate market we're promoting with respect to government via foreclosures are the Hampton Roads, right? Hampton Roads is basically located in the southern part of Virginia, which consists of around the 6 major cities within a 75-mile radius. Hampton, Virginia, Virginia Beach, Norfolk, Portsmouth, Newport News, and Suffolk, Virginia. And those are all Norfolk Naval Base is the largest naval base in the world, in the country. And there are other Newport News shipbuilding. They're building 3, the next generation of aircraft carriers, the USS 04, which is already to be fully operational very shortly. And then the other under construction is USS Enterprise and USS John F. Kennedy under construction. For each carrier that are being constructed, there are at least 10,000 full-time workers to work on each ship. Isn't that amazing? And there are other military bases in here, in this area as well, all 4 branches. All right, so, and the other areas we can talk about is El Paso, Texas, in the southwest part of Texas, and in which the U.S. Army Fort Bliss, Texas is located, very large base. By the way, all these bases, military bases, they're not going to go anywhere. They're going to be around forever. All right, so no worry about that. The other areas we can promote via foreclosures are in Central Texas, San Antonio, which, by the way, I was stationed in U.S. Army Fort Sam Houston in 1984 to 1985. And then San Antonio has one of the largest military concentration of active duty veterans and retirees. There are other major Air Force bases located in and around San Antonio. And of course, and then U.S. Army base in Fort Hood in Killeen, Texas, which is about 1 hour north of Austin, Texas. So that area is also doing well. And we are also doing Central Florida. Central Florida, I have to say, have the least amount of military folks, but in terms of active duty, that is, there are many ex-veterans that serve 1 or 2 terms in the military, and they happen to like to live in Florida, in particular Central Florida. But there are some active duty stations in Central Florida, the one in Jacksonville, which is the Mayport Naval Base located in Jacksonville, Florida. In Tampa, there's a Air Force base located in Tampa as well. And of course, there are a number of VA foreclosures located throughout Central Florida, which is a very highly desirable area, as you know. And U.S. Army, Fort Campbell, Kentucky, home of the 101st Airborne Division. I was stationed there back in 1981 to 1982. And the one of the fastest growing small city is located around 10 miles south of U.S. Army Fort Campbell, Kentucky, at the border of Tennessee, Clarksville, Tennessee. Very fast growing, and there are a number of foreclosures every single week and every month that qualify for the cash flow 5% down. Okay, so with that said, let's go to another training deck. The next training deck I want to call to your attention is, so some of you asking, I'm saying this, that again, all these areas that you're buying potentially through my help via foreclosures, I'm not saying 100% of the tenants will be military people. I would say, like I said, 50 to 75% of them are, and active duty people, because I said I'm a finance clerk. Okay, the first 5 years of my service in the U.S. Army, I was a finance clerk, so I help people in process and out process the soldiers. You know, soldiers move all the time. A single soldier, they move every 2 years unless they want to re-enlist and extend for another tour in the same area potentially. And then a married soldier with family, with a spouse and children, they typically stay at least 3 years in a particular area, and then they leave, or they can extend another contract to stay in the same duty station for personal or military related reasons. So the beauty of renting to a military active duty people, a soldier, is that they get an extra housing allowance. Is called BAH. So bear in mind, BAH means basic allowance for housing. Okay, but the soldier, there are 2 categories of soldier, right? Some of you are most of you live in the Bay Area in California. You don't run across too many people with too many military veterans. Most of the veterans are located in the South and Southeast and the East Coast, right? So there are 2 categories of military people. One are enlisted soldiers, right? Enlisted E1 to E9, right? Enlisted E1 private, E2 private, E3, whatever, then go into a sergeant, E5 and above a sergeant. Then of course you have the officer corps. The officers are lieutenants to captain, to major, to lieutenant colonel, to a general, right? In the Army, and then in the Marine and Navy is they have a different kind of generics terminology, but the rank, the numerical system are the same, right? I mean, in the Navy, like O1 is an ensign, O2 is an ensign, O3 is a lieutenant, O4 is a lieutenant commander, O5 is a commander, O6 is an admiral, right? Then you 1-star, 2-star, 3-star, 4-star, 5-star admiral. In the officer corps, in the U.S. Army officer corps, and the Marine, same thing, same numerical rating, but the terminology is different. So in Army and the Marine, and in the Air Force, for that matter, an officer is O1 is a lieutenant, O2 is also a lieutenant. I mean, O1 is a second lieutenant, O2 is a first lieutenant, O3, officer 3 is a captain, O4 is a major, O5 is a lieutenant colonel, O6 is a colonel, O7 is a general, 1-star, then 2-star, then 3-star, whatever, right? Okay, you get that? All right, so all the soldiers' base pay are not affected. Even oftentimes in this large military post, what is this? In a large military post, there's not enough on-post housing for the soldiers. The only that's the way it is, right? It's always been like that, always will be. So they could only on pace housing or available for the high ranking individuals, most likely majors and commanders and above, and admirals and generals, maybe some captains. And in terms of enlisted soldiers, on base housing available for married soldiers or like E7, okay, someone enlisted individual that been around for a long time. E7, E8, E9. Enlisted soldier are like E1 is a private, E2 is a private, E3 is a private, E4 is a specialist. Then E5 is a sergeant, okay, regular sergeant. Then E6 is a staff sergeant, E7 is sergeant first class, E8 is a master sergeant, E9 is a sergeant major. So E1 to E9. So enlisted soldier, myself, I'm retired E6 with 20 years of service. But some people stay for a long 30 years, and they, typically 20 years retirement for enlisted and officers. But some people can stay beyond 20 years. And at the end of 20 or 30 years, whenever you choose to retire, you get a full military pension for the rest of your life and medical benefit almost free for the rest of your life, which is amazing benefit. But at the end of the day is that's how it goes. All right. So they receive base pay. Their base pay is not the highest, but they live good. I mean, guarantee paycheck, right? What more can you ask? Inflation, recession-proof military jobs. So their base pay is not affected. So the other individuals that have to be lift off post. When a soldier in a particular duty station, they have to lift off post. They are typically enlisted or around E4 to E6, sometimes E7. E4 is a specialist, been around in the Army, in the service for like active duty full time for like 2 to 3 years, 4 years maybe. E4. E5 is a sergeant, okay? E5, they've been in the Army for like 5, 6, 7 years. And E6, they've been in a service like E6 sergeant, staff sergeant. They were around for 6 to 13 years, that time right. E7 is sergeant first class. Like I said, from 10 to 18 years of service. And E8 and E9, the highest ranking enlisted, they stay for 18 to 20 to 30 years. So those individuals, a young officer, lieutenant, or a captain, 01 to 03, they basically have to leave off post. And then outside the base, and then enlisted from anywhere from E4 to E7 normally have no choice but to leave off post because of inadequate on-post housing. So depending on the cost of living and the area where the military installation is located, and the cost of living in the area, the U.S. Government, they provide the soldiers to live off post, what you call basic BAH, basic allowance for housing on a monthly basis. This actual housing allowance is tax-free, is not taxable. So let me give you an example, the area that we are covering. So let's talk about North Carolina, okay? So bear with me, okay? I'm giving you some education. You need to listen and watch this video more than once, perhaps, to grasp the importance of this particular training module. So North Carolina, so the areas that we're promoting, all right, let's go to the area that we're promoting. Camp Lejeune, Marine Corps. So because of cost of living is not that high, so like I said, the tenant you can potentially procure on the property you're purchasing is probably typically specialist E4 or a sergeant E5 or sergeant E6 with dependents. They're married, they have their family members with children, whatever. They are giving this tax-free monthly housing allowance in the areas of Camp Lejeune, which is in Jacksonville, North Carolina. So you could potentially rent. Most of the renter, if they are active duty, if they are renting your rental property, for example, these are with dependents. With dependents, of course, the military pay the higher housing allowance, slightly higher. Some single soldiers, E4 and E6, they've been around 6, 7, 8 years in the military. Some of them were not married, but they are no have no choice but live off post. They're giving a slightly lower housing allowance, so to the tune of this amount, right? And something that I want to discuss further, there are people that live off post. They are also giving a bachelor allowance for subsistence. It's called BAS. Those are those are meal and food allowance to the tune of $300 average per month, tax-free allowance. In addition to these tax-free housing allowance, extra allowance BAS to cover the cost of renting off post and their basic pay. All these military folks, their base pay are not affected. They preserve their base pay. So these are nice overall military compensation. So at the end of the day, in Jacksonville, North Carolina, if I'm, on any particular week, if I have a property that you can buy via foreclosure 5% down for cash flow, then you have to know that the renter could be E4 to E6, married. They have housing allowance around 1347 on the average, right? If it's a single, slightly less. But so if it is, if the monthly gross rent you can capture is around 1300, or even sometimes you have an officer or a lieutenant or a captain with 6 or 7 years of service, they have a monthly housing allowance of 1600, so they can pay more on a higher price rental home as opposed to an enlisted soldier who get paid less, have less education. They're not, most of them enlisted soldiers are not college graduates, although more and more of them are college graduates these days. But most officers are 4-year college graduates, and many even have advanced degrees. All right, so if you're getting in Jacksonville, North Carolina, somewhere around 1300, so the housing property you should buy should be around anywhere from 130 to $150,000. So I've done the numbers, okay? Just trust me. Don't buy anything above 160,000, 180,000. You're not going to cash flow because the key is 5% down, right? You need the cash flow. So if you buy a property, the 1% rule, right? The 1% multiply the purchase price equal whatever. So 1% rule of 1,300 is a property is about 130,000. So you buy something like that, you will cash flow a couple $100 per month, net monthly cash flow. All right, so enough of in this area. So we talked about Jacksonville, North Carolina. Let's finish up North Carolina. We talk about Fayetteville, which is located in U.S. Army Fort Bragg, home of the 82nd Airborne Division. So they are more inland. Fayetteville, North Carolina is located like in inland, in the middle of North Carolina. Very large military base. And the BAH, Bachelor Allowance for Housing, is kind of similar, 12 to 1400 range. So the property you should buy is 120 to 150,000. If you were to rent to a military active people, they'd be paying you gross rent of 1,200 to 1,400, and you can cash flow at 5% down. Okay, everybody, very clear. So that's all I'm going to talk about in North Carolina. And the other area that we're promoting is Virginia, Southern Virginia, which is called Hampton Roads, as I mentioned. So let's go over Virginia, which is where is it? Where is Virginia? Oh, right here. All right, so let's look at the cost of living and housing allowance. Let's jump over to the area. Here it is. Hampton, Newport News, Virginia Beach, and Norfolk, major naval base. Many military people, active duty retirees, veterans live in this area. So the BAH, Bachelor Allowance for Housing, Basic Allowance for Housing, are a little bit higher. So if you were to rent into E4 or E5 sergeant or E6 sergeant, they can pay you. They have the money available to rent 1,500 to 1,700. All right, that's enlisted. If you're lucky enough to find a tenant who are an officer, a captain, 03 with 5 or 6 years of service, they can pay you almost $2,000. But there are not that many officers, right? The ratio of enlisted soldiers to officers is around 15 to 1. So let's stick to the bread and butter. E5 or E6. They are your typical people that have been E6 or E7, been around for 10 to 12 years in the military. They have 1 or 2 children, maybe 3, married, and their spouse is living or post with them, so they could pay. They're getting tax-free housing allowance of 15 to 1700. So you know the rule, right? You know the formula. So the property you should buy in this area is 150 to 180,000. With 5% down using a vending financing, you should be able to cash flow positive monthly after deducting everything. All right. So enough said. That's enough for that. And so that enough for Virginia. Great area to purchase. As we mentioned, let's talk about Tennessee. Actually, yeah, let's talk about Kentucky. And let me tell you why. This is also a very good area. Oh, how come so hard? Oh, here it is. So Kentucky, good area to buy government foreclosures. Fort Campbell, by the way, I was stationed in U.S. Army Fort Campbell, Kentucky from 1981 to 1982. A long time ago. Anyway, yes, that's right. I was there and had a good time. I was there for 2 years. So Kentucky borders Tennessee, 20 miles below Fort Campbell. There's a very good, fast-growing city called Clarksville, Tennessee. Clarksville is a up-and-coming, fast-growing city, very growing very fast, very good market. So there are few government foreclosure you should look into. So I know all about Fort Campbell and Clarksville, so very good area to buy a government foreclosure property and rent it out to active duty people or civilians. And sergeant get married with dependents. They get anywhere from 1362 to almost 1400. Okay, E6, 14 to something. So the property you're going to buy is around $130,000 to $160,000, and 5% down vending financing. You should achieve positive cash flow. Okay, so this is a good area to buy as well. So that's enough for Kentucky, Tennessee, and hopefully I did not miss anything. So let's go over to Texas. Go back to Texas, right? In Texas, as I mentioned, let's go over the areas I want to cover. Okay, let's cover El Paso. El Paso, Texas is in the extreme western part of Texas, next to the New Mexico border. U.S. Army Fort Bliss is located there. Huge military base, gonna be there forever. So that's another area you should buy U.S. Army government foreclosures with 5% down, investment loan, vending financing. Any investor that can qualify for financing, and in addition, you have 2 years of real estate experience, you can qualify for this very unique 5% down program. So with that in mind, the BAH, Basic Allowance for Housing, calculated based on the area with the cost of living being factored in. So for sergeant, married with dependents, they can pay you $1,200. A higher rank sergeant, E6 or E7, can pay you $1,400 to $1,500. An officer, from time to time, you'll be able to get an officer that can rent off post. A captain with 10 years of service, they can pay, they have a housing allowance monthly of $1,500, so they can afford higher rent. But let's stick to most people going to be enlisted E4 to E6 range, 1161 to almost 1,500. So the property you're going to buy in El Paso potentially around $140,000 to $160,000, and you should be able to achieve a couple $100 of monthly net positive cash flow in El Paso, Texas. Okay, all right. Let's finally, no, not finally, 2 more areas of Texas you should consider, which there are weekly government foreclosures listings for your view and submission. In San Antonio, I was stationed in San Antonio in 1984 to 1985, I was stationed in the U.S. Army Fort Sam Houston, Texas, right in the heart of San Antonio. San Antonio, one of the major military towns. In fact, San Antonio is one of the top 10 fastest growing city in the country. So it's not only there is a heavy concentration of active duty installations, Air Force, Army, and what have you. Then a lot of ex-veterans and a lot of retirees, military retirees, live in San Antonio area. All right, so and the housing allowance there is a little bit higher, which is good. So E4 to E5, married, live in all posts, can have the ability to obtain housing allowance almost $1,700. That's a good sign. E5, only 5 or 6 years of a military service can afford $1,700 at least. Sergeant E7, Sergeant First Class, E8 can pay you $1,700. Okay, an officer who typically have to live off post is like a lieutenant or captain, 02 to 03 with 5 to 7 years of experience. They have the ability to pay you $1,800 to almost $2,000 monthly allowance. So the property you can buy in San Antonio is around 170,000 to even $200,000 with 5% down. You can cash flow. All right. Okay. So here are my words. Understand what I'm trying to say. So very good market, San Antonio. We have many listings available on a weekly basis. I will put that out to you on a monthly basis or bi-weekly basis. Okay. All right. And finally, one final area in Texas that you should consider is U.S. Army Fort Hood, which happens to be the largest military installation in the world in terms of land mass, in terms of acres, right? U.S. Army Fort Hood is huge, located in Killeen, Texas, K-I-L-E-E-N, Killeen, Texas, which is 1 hour north of Austin. Once again, as you know, we've been promoting Central Texas for regular investors for many years with Ken Venner, and there's a tremendous amount of growth in the area, up on the area. So Killeen, only 1 hour away from Austin. So anyway, if you rent to an active duty soldier, the housing allowance are a little bit lower in the area because the cost of living is not that high yet. So a sergeant, a low-level sergeant E5, will get a housing allowance of $1,152 monthly, up to E7 of $1,300. So therefore, the kind of property you should buy, the price range in Killeen, Texas area, in close by would be, do the math, right? Around 120,000, 140,000 max. If you crunch the numbers, that's almost 1% rent to value ratio. All right, capitalization rate around 7%, cash on cash return like 15% on a 5% down, and the total ROI of like 30%. You calculate total return on investment in all of these via foreclosure property with 5% down is very attractive because of the potential for buying at 10% below market value and the 2 to 3% potential appreciation in all these military markets. That'll give a very good return on your investment above and beyond your positive cash flow. Does that make sense? All right, so let me see. And finally, the final area that we can discuss is in Florida. Florida is a area that many of you are very much aware of. Is one of the top 2 or 3 fastest growing areas in the country in terms of population growth and what have you. So let me find Florida. Okay, right here, Florida. We can focus on Central Florida because it's a good, safe area. So let's go over to the area that have a lot. Jacksonville, Florida is a good, very fast-growing city. There's a naval base located in Mayport Naval Base, fairly large naval base located in Jacksonville, Florida. But Florida is a very large city, very fast-growing, one of the top markets in the country, Jacksonville. So there's quite a few of via foreclosures there that we have listing. So cost of living is higher. So the housing allowance for active duty renters are fairly high. E5 at an E6 sergeant can pay you anywhere from $1,641 to almost $1,800. E7 with 10 to 15 years of service, active duty service, they can pay you up to $1,800. So therefore, if you do the math, the housing price you should buy, the government foreclosures, the listing that we're going to put out to you on a regular basis, all around 170K, even 200,000, right? You can cash flow. So in very good areas in Jacksonville. Does that make sense? And finally, not finally, I'll be careful how I say it. The other area, of course, we have properties in Orlando, but most of the property inside Orlando are not active duty members. They are regular people. They're buying those via foreclosures. So I'm not going to talk about this, which is a great market, don't get me wrong, but they are not mostly civilians going to rent, right? Because there are not too many military bases in Orlando, although there's a lot of military veterans that live there, retirees and what have you. And the ratio of active duty tenant versus civilians are kind of minuscule. So, and then I'm going to talk about Tampa, great area. There are a number of government via foreclosures. There's an Air Force base located close by in Tampa. MacDill Air Force Base. I don't know whether you heard of MacDill Air Force Base. It's an active duty base located deep in the heart of Tampa. Okay, so but Tampa is a very, very large town, very fast growing. It's on the Gulf Coast of Central Gulf Coast, or the Gulf of Mexico, and the BAH is quite high. E5, E6 already getting 2,100. Wow. Housing allowance, E7, 2,100 enlisted. So those are your at least $2,000. So you can buy a property for $180,000 to $220,000 with 5% down. And if you rent it to a active duty sergeant, E6, E5 to E7, you should be able to cash flow, right? If you rent to an officer, a lieutenant or a captain who have a housing allowance of $2,100 to $2,200, you can buy a house, a rental property, a government via foreclosure for like $230,000, $250K. With 5% down, Venti financing as an investor financing using this unique system, then you should be able to deposit cash flow. Is it amazing? So, okay, that's all I have to say on this module. I have taken longer than usual, but nevertheless, it's important for me to discuss this. So this is an important trading module. Each time you receive my newsletter about weekly listings with respect to government via foreclosures, then you may have to replay this training module, because I'm not saying you should, military renters makes the best renters because they have a mission to accomplish, and they can't screw it up. And it's like a almost guaranteed government rent, government voucher. So these military soldiers, there's no way they cannot pay you, because this is actual housing allowance above and beyond their base pay. So eviction and people defaulting, these active duty soldiers or people defaulting are quite rare, although they do happen, right? But very rare. So renting to military people are very successful. This market I just mentioned has been a good real estate market, which is a very specialized market. Most mainstream real estate investors out there are not aware of this. I am, because of my unique background and the via foreclosure process, and I know the market. Physically, I've been to these areas in the past, and I know this kind of system. So this is a very, very unique niche market. If you have those prerequisites requirement, then feel free to work with me to I can help you buy these great foreclosures, good cash flow, good appreciation in great markets, very low vacancy rates, very high occupancy rates, and good renters. They're not going to trash your house, because if the active duty tenants, if they trash your house, they would be subject to the UCMJ, Uniform Code of Military Justice. They cannot screw it up, okay? So they live at your rent house for at least 2 to 3 years, possibly more, and they are in each major military station located throughout the U.S. and in the world. People, they get transferred all the time, so there are people moving in and out, in and out. So you can always have a good influx of tenants who are active duty, right? So they make very good tenants for obvious reasons. And I think that's it. Hopefully I didn't miss anything. Okay, that's all I have to say for now. And look forward to working with each and every one of you. Great leverage using a minimal down payment and yet still cash flow, buying a good property, good quality, newer property in fast growing markets in the various locations where there are heavy concentration of military personnel. Okay, thank you so much. This is Seewing Yee from the Yee Real Estate Network. Thank you for attending. Sorry for this training module to be fairly long, but I have to, these are very important content that you must remember and memorize and understand. Thank you so much. This is Seewing Yee. Have a nice day. Goodbye.